I normally almost always keep my work week under 20 hours per week. We do multiple six figures every year. Honestly, I'm enjoying running the business more than I have since I ever started, just because I'm loving that I'm the person in there talking to the students, and that really makes my work so much more meaningful. The business actually makes just as much money, if not more, when the team is smaller and I'm more hands-on and we're running fewer live cohorts. Working for myself, working online, especially digital products, have had such a profound impact on my life that it really is first and foremost my mission to bring that opportunity to as many, especially parents, as possible, because I think that society is better when parents spend more time with their kids, for sure.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Selling Online Courses. We are here to share winning strategies and secret hacks from top performers in the online course industry. My name is John Ainsworth and today's guest is Gillian Perkins. Now, Gillian is the CEO of Startup Society, the host of the Work Less, Earn More podcast, and one of the most watched YouTubers in the online business space. She's teaching people how to start and build profitable online businesses that earn passive income and allow for a flexible lifestyle. Now, her entrepreneurial streak started early. At just 14 years old, what began as teaching flute lessons to a few neighbors grew into the Northwest School of Music, one of the largest music schools in Oregon. And years later, she brought that same teaching instinct online. Her YouTube channel now has over 700,000 subscribers and more than 35 million views. Then in 2018, she started Startup Society, a monthly membership that since guided thousands of entrepreneurs through her step-by-step frameworks, all while keeping her work week under 30 hours as a homeschool mum of 6. For anybody building an online course or membership, Gillian is a near-perfect case study. She's built an audience from her own expertise, turned it into a recurring revenue business, and done it on a part-time schedule. Gillian, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here, and thank you for that intro. Very flattering and very accurate. Very accurate. I will say I normally almost always keep my work week under 20 hours per week, but to say
very nice.
I keep it under 30 was even more accurate because that is always true.
I'm really curious for you. It seems like I've looked at a bunch of your videos and kind of watched what you've been doing for quite a while. It seems like your audience is like people who are just getting started. Is that fair? Is that right?
Yeah, it is primarily people who are getting started. I really do have a heart for those people because, working for myself, working online, especially digital products, have had such a profound impact on my life that it really is first and foremost my mission to bring that opportunity to as many, especially parents, as possible, because I think that society is better when parents spend more time with their kids, for sure. And it can be difficult to do that when maybe both parents have to work in today's economy, or even just dad's gone all the time working way too many hours, that sort of thing. So I try to bring this lifestyle, this opportunity to as many parents as possible. I do also, have plenty of people in my audience who have been in this game for several years, and I help them to take their business to the next level with, with sales strategies for online courses like you talk about here. But the majority of my audience, you are right.
So what are you helping people to do? Is it to start any business, or is there certain kinds of businesses you're helping people to get going with?
So specifically online businesses that sell digital products, primarily online courses and memberships, some like coaching and services as well.
Okay, cool. So can you give people some kind of idea of the size of your business? Doesn't need to be revenue, but like number of students or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have quite a big audience on social media, especially and particularly on YouTube. So there's over 700,000 subscribers on YouTube. And then I solidly have an email list of, it swings between like 50,000 to 100,000, depending on where we are in that list cleaning cycle. And then we do like multiple six figures every year. It fluctuates from year to year, depending on whether I had a baby that year or not, more than anything, to be quite frank. Because I think you probably mentioned I have 6 kids. So there have been a lot of years when I had a baby and then I take several months off, and that slows things down a bit. I have a great little team that keeps things running while I'm gone, but without the, what do you call that? The I don't know, the entrepreneurial founder, the visionary at the helm, things don't normally grow while I'm gone. And then depending on what the economy is doing or not doing, it might be easier or more difficult to get it to grow. So sometimes we're closer to 1 million and sometimes it's more like a couple 100,000, but it
Okay.
just swings kind of back and forth.
What kind of price courses are you selling to people?
So I try to price intelligently, meaning that I try to offer lower cost courses for people who are just getting started, and then
Hmm.
more expensive programs for people who are further along and, they have more confidence in their business idea because it's really making them money. They also have more profit to be able to reinvest into their business. So my entry level product starts with a membership that's normally $49 per month.
Hmm.
And then we have like a handful of courses, a small handful, like 3 courses that are a few $100s. And then we have 1 or 2 high ticket programs that are a couple or a few $1,000s that we kind of alternate back and forth depending on what it seems like the audience is most looking for.
And do you run the high ticket programs? Like, are they on an ongoing basis, or are they like cohorts? Are you just running
Yeah,
every
we
so
run
often?
them as cohorts. Even the courses that are just a few $100s, we typically run as live cohorts. We have Evergreen
Oh,
systems that run in the background where people can join them with more of that like DIY self-study approach. But I love the energy that we get when we run them live, and I notice that the students get, the very best results when we do that. So I make that a priority to run each program live at least once per year.
okay. So talk us through how that works. Like, give me the example of the cheapest course that you've got that you're also doing it kind of as a live cohort, or however you describe it.
Yeah, okay. So that would probably be um we have 2, but,
Okay.
the business one is called Validate, and it's an 8-week accelerator that guides the students to test out their product idea and ensure that there's demand and run their first launch and get their first sale so they have the confidence, that there is demand for it. And, we only run that program as an accelerator actually because it's a fairly, like, intensive process for 8 weeks. We get a lot done in those 8 weeks between a lot of like messaging work and market research in the opposite order. First, we do market research, then we work on messaging and just packaging the product really well. And then we actually run a launch with them. And it's too much, I think, for somebody to do self study. It would be overwhelming. It would absolutely end up taking them at least twice as long. And a lot of the
Hmm.
beauty in it is kind of hurrying up and getting it done. It's not for everybody. Some people I think need a longer, slower approach. But for the people who are ready to hurry up and make this happen, Validate is an awesome option.
And how much do you sell that for?
And we typically sell it for $497.
Okay. And then how does it work in terms of, you're saying you're doing it live with people? Are you doing group coaching calls? You got like a Facebook group? Like, how do you kind of manage the live element of it?
Yeah, yeah. So, and I will say about the price, the reason I say it's typically $497 is because sometimes we offer kind of 2 tiers where there might be a tier that's a little bit cheaper, maybe around 400 or 500, that
Hmm.
is, while it is, we're still doing it together, but it's self-study in terms of they're not getting any like one-on-one hand-holding. And
Yeah.
then oftentimes there's a higher tier we offer that's closer to $1,000 where they actually have some one-on-one calls with a coach as well. In terms of how we do it with the students, not a Facebook group, but we have a Slack group
Hmm.
where we are with them on a daily basis. And then we also do a live group coaching call on Zoom every single week throughout those 8 weeks of the program. And the other thing is that all the students are going through the same part of the process each week. So we're all on week 1 together, we're all on week 2 together, and so on, which makes, I think, the conversation, like it really facilitates the conversation in Slack really well because everybody
Mm.
is working on the same objective and struggling with the same things at the same time. So we're all on the same page.
And how do you find it for the kind of margins on that? Because I think I'll tell you why
Hmm.
I'm asking. Like, so a lot of
Mhm.
people listening are selling courses with no coaching, and I do my best to try and convince people to also do coaching programs because I think a few reasons. One, you can sell them for more money. So
Yes.
therefore, if you've
Hmm.
got an audience who are spending $250 with you on your courses, the same people or some proportion of those people will spend $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever. So it's like, I've got
Hmm.
a friend who's teaching bass, and he sells the course. His membership is like $35 a month, but he also
Hmm.
sells a $10,000 group, a one-to-one coaching program. And it's like, it's not with him, it's with his coaches. So it's like this, and I've seen this work consistently in lots of different niches. So I try and convince people kind of there's all this extra money that's there.
Yeah.
And there's a percentage of people who are in your audience already who are ready to go pay for this thing. And people want some extra support. But the pushback I get from people is that they don't want to manage that. They wanted the lifestyle part of it, right? They want the freedom of time. They don't want to be on calls too much. They don't kind of want to handle that. They're not sure about hiring coaches. Now, you're big into the lifestyle element, but you've done this. You've hired coaches and you've got this running. So I think you've got some insights that would be really useful for people in that kind of situation. Could you kind of share how that's worked for you? What's been good? What's been bad?
Yeah. Well, I would first say the margins probably wouldn't be that great if you only had a very small handful of students
Hmm.
in a higher ticket, more hands-on, more high-touch program like that, and you also wanted to outsource the coaching. So, like, if you hired a coach or two or three, and you only had three students in the program,
Yeah.
obviously, like, you're probably losing money at that point. But if you can get, I would say, it doesn't have to be a huge group. Sometimes even just a dozen people or 20 people into this program, then the margins I would say are there even if you are outsourcing the coaching. It's only a couple or, a handful of hours per week of work that you would be outsourcing. I think it works the very best when you do show up as the creator of the course and you are hands-on with your students, at least as much as you can be. And that's not exactly what I mean. I mean, as long as it's possible, considering the number of students and the number of like interactions happening. So you get to a point where maybe you have hundreds of students in the program and they're talking to you so much, you gotta get some help with
Yeah.
interacting with
Yeah.
them and just with responding to them. But that's not most people's situation. So if you do have like a few dozen people in the program, you can probably handle the interacting with them in your community and also running the coaching calls in, I would say, about 5 hours per week, maybe as much as 10. And the reason why I love running the programs this way is, as I mentioned before, that the students get such better results, which not only like
Mm.
makes me feel good, that I'm actually helping them, but also it is the best for the bottom line, I would say, because it leads to testimonials, it leads to word of mouth. You know, a customer who comes in and looks at your course and says, "Wow, this is a great course," they're not going to refer anyone. But a customer who comes in and whether or not they're impressed with the course, but they go through the course and they get real results, then they're going to be talking about their results to other people and mentioning your course. And so you'll naturally get those word of mouth referrals. And I think that, the customers are by far the most successful when they have that coaching, and especially the accountability, I would say, that comes with the
Mm.
coaching, and the accountability that comes with a little bit of peer pressure of everybody doing it all at the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think it's great. I think one of the other reasons why it's such a really big deal is that, like, I think there's a bunch of people are starting to worry that, like, AI is going to mean that courses
Mm.
aren't as effective as a way of, like, teaching. And I think it's like, well, okay, so what you going to do about it? So there's no point just worrying and getting annoyed at AI about it. So it's like one of the things that I've seen people do that seems to be working really well is increasing the amount of like community feedback, group coaching, one-on-one feedback, just like trying to make it more of like something that you just can't get with the AI because you've got the human interaction, like with other people in the community, like you're saying, for the accountability, for the feedback, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Um, I just think it's like, it makes a lot of sense. It's just harder, but it's like, okay, that's all right. We could do this.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, if you are looking for something that is, like, absolutely super passive and you never have to interact with anybody, then I can see why you wouldn't wanna do the coaching. If you want
Mm,
that Tim Ferriss, 4-hour work week. I made a
yeah.
thing once, I put it up for sale on the internet, now people buy it while I'm sleeping. Then actually I don't think that's gonna work out for you very well, especially with AI on the scene. That used to work a long time ago. That used to work, and it just doesn't anymore. There's too much competition with other courses or the programs that are out there, and certainly with the ease of AI. So, I mean, you might get a sale here and there, but it's not going to be a real business. To be a real business, I do think that you have to be there, you have to be present, you have to be working with your students. It could be asynchronous if you want. It doesn't have to be you on camera necessarily, and it doesn't have to be a lot of interaction, but I do think that you need to be present and showing up for your students.
Now, one of the other things that you've said is that you believe you can build a $500,000 business with a tiny team of only a
Mm.
few part-time contractors. Is that how big's your team that you've got?
It's fluctuated over the years depending on
Okay.
my needs, whether, if I was having a baby, for example, I needed a bigger team to run things while I was gone. Lately,
Uh-huh.
I've been like in the office doing so much myself and whatnot. So I've really downsized my team. I have one mostly full-time person. She works about the same amount as me. So if we're calling that
Okay.
full-time, you know what I mean? 20, 30 hours a week, normally closer to 20. And so I've got her, and she, if you are familiar with like the rocket fuel
Mhm.
sort of approach, she does the integrator side of my business. Basically, she's like the project manager, the business manager, whatever you want to call it. And I do the visionary side of things. And then I have literally just kind of three other people who all work very, very little. One is a graphic designer, one is a video editor, and one is a podcast editor. So they each have their own like area of expertise, their own businesses. I wouldn't really even consider them part of my internal team. I
Mhm.
used to have a much more of an internal team where I had coaches and customer service people and all that who worked for me, who interacted with the customers, and worked significantly more hours. These three individuals, they all have their own business. I'm just their client. They do a few hours of work for me each week to help us produce the content. So it's the smallest my team has ever been since I started, but
Ah.
honestly, I am enjoying running the business more than I have since I ever started, if that makes sense. Just because I'm loving that I'm the person in there, like talking to the students, and that really makes
Mhm.
my work so much more meaningful.
Nice. What's the biggest the team ever got to?
It was over a dozen people. I would say if you count those like external freelancer people, it was probably up to about 15. Yeah. So not huge by any means, but it's a very different look and feel than, the tiny team I have today that I would say is basically like two plus a couple extras.
Mm.
Or
How
kind
did
of
you
one. I mean, me and one other person. So depending
Yeah,
on how you're
yeah, yeah,
counting.
yeah. I'm a massive fan of that book, Rocket Fuel. And
Yeah.
for anyone who's not read it, it's basically core concept is it tends to be that the kind of person who starts a business is a visionary type person, but they don't necessarily want to be the same person. They're not the same personality type necessarily who makes the trains run on time, who organizes everything, who is like the ideal project manager. They're more of like I've got this new idea, let's go in this direction, I've got this new thing to try. His thesis is in the book is like there's lots and lots of businesses that have run really well because they've had one person who was the front of the business doing exciting things, new ideas, etc., and someone behind the scenes who made everything run really smoothly. And that's the visionary integrator kind of concept. So
Hmm.
how did you manage to find your integrator? Because people ask me about this. I've got someone in the business who is very much the integrator, and it's
Hmm.
amazing. And people ask
Yeah.
me, how did you find them? And I'm like, luck. And I'm like, I know that's not repeatable. So have you got any
Okay.
insights for people?
Yeah. Well, I think it probably would have been a lot harder, maybe over 10 years ago, but I hired my integrator right about 7 or 8 or 9. 8 or 9 years ago. It was in 2018 that I hired her. So I guess that's 8 years. So first I'll say I hired her what most people would consider to be too early. Most
Okay.
people would say don't hire a business manager or an integrator or some sort of role like that if you don't really have much of a business to manage, if you don't specifically have a team. Okay, that's the main thing. It's like hire some
Yeah.
other people, and then when there's like enough for them to manage, then it might make sense. I hired my integrator, her name is Courtney, as soon as I had the revenue. Okay, as
Hmm.
soon as, and so I didn't have any other team. I had a video editor. That was it. Me and a video editor. So there was nobody for her to manage except for me. And that was literally why I hired her, to manage me and to help me keep my messes organized. Because as you were
Okay.
describing, I charge forward with all my ideas and I make a big mess in the process. Um,
Hmm.
I'm the person in the workshop, making the project and leaving my tools all over the floor and losing everything. So I could tell that this was holding me back, and it was definitely going to create bigger problems down the road. It was making it
Hmm.
so my business would ultimately not be scalable, would probably not be sustainable. And so I needed some help. And I didn't know I needed that. I thought I was just bad at some things until I read that book, Rocket Fuel. And it was just such a light bulb moment for me. And I immediately realized that that would change everything for me. And in fact, it was true. Sometimes you think something will change everything for you. And then, it turns out like, oh no, there are 10 other problems. But in my
Yeah.
case, that was very much what I needed. Now, how I found her and how I would recommend anybody find her, and why I say that it's so easy now, is because now there's this industry called online business managers, or OBMs. And there are a couple, maybe more than that, but I'm familiar with a couple specific individuals that run great training programs that teach people how to be OBMs. Now, that's not to say that every person who comes out of a program like that is going to be a great OBM, because I do think that being a great OBM relies heavily on personality and then is very much facilitated by training, by those hard skills. So the person who trained my OBM, her name is Sarah Noked. She runs the OBM school. She has a fantastic program, and she turns out hundreds of students per year. And so if you're looking for an OBM, an online business manager, or an integrator or something like that, I would highly recommend actually contacting Sarah Noked. And like I said, there's other people who do this too, and telling them, that you want to hire somebody like this, and they will give you referrals. They will give you a handful, or, as many as you want, basically, of at least potentially qualified and most likely qualified people. So when I hired mine, I didn't know about that yet. So I did not actually ask Sarah or the OBM school or anybody like that. I instead put up a job post. And I think back in the day, we were all in the Facebook group. So I think that I shared it specifically in some Facebook groups. But I was asking for an OBM, an online business manager. And I remember I ended up interviewing about half a dozen people. And there were 2 or 3 that stood out as like maybe a good fit. And I'm really glad that I picked Courtney, because she turned out to be like as amazing as possible, and she's been with me ever since.
Well, that's amazing, isn't it? To have the same person with you for 9 years. That must have been a really good connection.
Yes, it is.
Do you feel like was there anything that you did in that process that helped you to have made the right choice? Or do you feel like you got a bit lucky as well in terms of that? Like, is there anything that other people can learn from that they might be able to do when they're doing that kind of interviewing process for it?
I always like to say that I like to hire bossy people. I like to hire people who are confident in what they do, and they're not afraid to tell me what they think, and not afraid to take ownership of roles. And so that was one of the reasons that I picked Courtney over the other people who I interviewed, was because when I interviewed her, she presented a plan to me of, how she was going to change my business. And which is very different than how most people would approach an interview, where, they would just answer the questions and, anything that the new potential boss was asking them, they would say, oh yeah, sure, I could do that. That was not what Courtney said to me.
Yeah.
She said, here's my plan for how we're going to change your business and how we're going to make your business work better. And that sounded great to me. And I didn't know, for sure if she would be capable of that or not. But I loved that she had a plan and that she was being so proactive like that. And in fact, she came into the business and that was what she did. She really took ownership in an incredible way. And it was not me managing her at all. I hired her to manage me. And so that would be my advice to anybody who is trying to hire somebody for that integrator role or that business management role. Hire somebody who has the skills, but also is confident in their plan and confident as a leader in their own right. And let them manage you. It's different than how maybe you would be managed. So in a marriage, right, you have the husband and the wife, and it works best, I think, and maybe this is a controversial opinion, but I think it works best when one person is, at least to some degree, the leader. And in my opinion, it works the best when the husband is the leader. Sorry, we're getting into controversial territory here. But so that's one kind of leader, but there's a different kind of leader, and that is the mom leader, right? The mom is the leader, especially of the children, in the sense that she's like managing things. She's helping them to be at the right place on the right time and pick their lunch for them. And that doesn't mean that they're not their own independent people who have all sorts of opinions and thoughts and ideas and things that they pursue. But the mom kind of is a nurturing leader. Like, she takes care of them. And that was the sort of leader that I needed in my business. Like, I was the visionary. I was the husband in my business, but I needed a work wife who could make sure that my laundry was clean.
Okay. Yeah. I will not describe my integrator as my work wife.
That's fine.
It's not going to go down well with him. Okay, talk to me a little bit about the funnels and email promotions that you're running. When you're running, how many of those live cohorts do you do a year? You mentioned you've got quite a few of those.
Yeah. So it depends a little bit on like how big my team currently is and how hands on or hands off I'm being with things. And what's interesting, well, maybe I'll get into that. Well, maybe I'll get into that in a moment. But so basically, like if I have a bigger team and I'm being more hands off, each cohort requires less of my direct time and involvement, right? And so we can run more live cohorts. But then when I have a smaller team and I'm being more hands on, then we run fewer live cohorts. But what's interesting is that generally the business actually makes just as much money, if not more, when the team is smaller and I'm more hands on and we're running fewer live cohorts. You would think that fewer live cohorts would equal less revenue, and sometimes it does equal somewhat less revenue, but the profit margins are bigger because I'm not bankrolling a larger team.
Mm.
So at the end of the day, we certainly end up making more profit, but we also even sometimes end up making more revenue with fewer launches as well. I guess I didn't quite answer your question though. With a bigger team, we typically run between 6 to 12 live cohorts per year and closer to 12. When
Mhm.
there's a smaller team, it is normally a little bit under 6. So like I would say 4 to 6.
And do you do any other promotions of like the DIY courses or the templates or anything else like that in between when you're doing those fewer
Yes.
live cohorts?
Yeah, for sure. So I try to run some sort of live promotion at least every other month, even when it is a very small team. But I can't necessarily like launch a live cohort for one of the bigger programs. So yes, so it'll be kind of like a small So maybe, for example, we run Validate for 8 weeks. 2 months
Uh-huh.
later, we're launching a 6 month program as a live cohort. And so then for the next couple of launches, we might be seeing some of our DIY self study type programs. And so I basically try to alternate between bigger offers and smaller offers as I'm launching throughout the year.
Got it.
Something else, I guess, that should
Mhm.
be mentioned here is that in addition to these live launches that I run, we'll say about 6 times a year, I also have evergreen funnels that are working in the background that are
Uh-huh.
selling our self study programs, all of them. And so there's 3 or 4, depending on the season, of these funnels that are running just all the time and, yeah, just generating revenue in the background.
So how do you coordinate those when you've got the live launches? Do you pause those when you're doing the live launch, or do you kind of have them pause and then carry on where they were? Like how do you manage that?
Yes, yes. Well, primarily we just make sure that we think about this before each live launch.
Yeah.
If it is one of the couple 3 programs that there is an evergreen funnel running for in the background, we certainly think about, okay, how do we want to navigate this? Most of the time, we pause the evergreen funnel a couple weeks before so that the newest leads coming in will get the experience of the live launch, because that does tend to convert at a higher rate, certainly. And then even sometimes when we run other program launches where there isn't an evergreen funnel running it for it in the background, we sometimes still pause some of those evergreen funnels, again, because we will probably see the best results if those people go through the live launch, not just the evergreen funnel.
And who gets the evergreen funnel? Is that like a recurring thing, or is that just only new people get it for the first 6 months or something like that? I don't know.
They're each multi-stage. So when somebody first comes into the list, they, depending on their entry point, they'll go through one of a handful of different welcome sequence experiences, and
Uh-huh.
then get pitched the product. And I am a firm believer in pitching early. I think that when somebody first subscribes to your list, that is when they are the warmest lead. That is when they are the most interested in whatever the outcome is that you are teaching, and therefore the most likely to buy. And certainly not everybody will buy. I mean, obviously, but I don't just mean because, of course, only 5% or so of people buy. Not that, but some people will be in the place to buy right now, and some people will need to get to know you more or learn more about, the problem they're facing or your approach to the goal, those sorts of things. So I like to give them the opportunity to buy early on, and I try to do it with, I do it with a short sales promotion. So because not everybody will be ready now, it's normally somewhere between a 48-hour to 72-hour sort of promotion. So just a
Uh-huh.
couple of days. Give them the opportunity, but not hit them over the head with it. From there, and of course, there are different versions of this for different entry points, different products, but they go into what I call an evergreen newsletter. So
Hmm.
this is maybe kind of what you were alluding to here, but we have normally about 6 months worth of emails that they're getting either once or twice per week. That is staying focused on, the topic that they originally signed up for, giving them helpful information, and making soft pitches to them, inviting them
Hmm.
to maybe get on the wait list for the next time the program opens, or to sign up for the webinar that relates to that program, but never actually offering them the program to buy. I shouldn't say never, almost never. There's like
Okay.
one point normally in the middle of each of those evergreen funnels where it does, because, maybe they just need to be asked to buy the product and they're not going to click anything else. That is the case for some people. But most of the time, we've got these soft calls to action. If they click on it, that is going to send them into an actual promotional sequence. So, for example,
Okay.
they click on the webinar, that both will, potentially they register for the webinar, watch the webinar, go through the webinar funnel. But even if they don't, it's going to tag them as basically a hot lead for that product. And then they are going to get the webinar promoted to them more heavily, and then the product will go on sale for them.
Nice. And one of the things you mentioned there is that you found that the live launches do better.
Hmm.
And I always find this.
Yeah.
And
Normally I
I've
see
got
about twice the conversion rate.
why do you think that is? I've got my own like info and evidence or whatever, but I'm really
Yeah.
curious to hear like why do you think that? Are there specific things that you're doing that are different? Like, are you doing any Facebook lives or webinars or anything like that? Or like why do you think they work better?
Yeah, I honestly, I have some theories, but there's also a part of it that makes me scratch my head a little bit, because it's so consistent that we do get twice the conversion rate with the live launches than with the Evergreen. The Evergreen is 100% worth it because it is like pretty much totally passive, right?
Mm,
And I also, it's not just that it's passive income, it's I don't want to make everybody wait months and months and months for my live
yeah.
launch. Like if they want to buy now, I want to give them the opportunity to buy now. I really want to be helpful to them when they need the help. Um, in terms of why the live launches work so much better, in the past, like several years ago, I would have said it was because of essentially social proof that they
Hmm.
saw the launch happening on social media. They saw the chatter on social media. They saw me talking about it on social media. So they were experiencing this on multiple platforms, first of all. So they were seeing it
Hmm.
in email and then also on Instagram, maybe also on YouTube. And again, they were seeing that chatter. And so they saw other people being excited about it, and that made them want it. But in recent years, and maybe I shouldn't even say recent years, I am not somebody who's on social media very much at all. And I don't use it personally hardly at all. And I don't really enjoy using it for my business. And so I hardly do. There have been times in the past when I did more, but most years, and especially in more recent years, I don't. And so the live launch experience actually is so similar to the Evergreen experience, in terms of it's basically just email. One of the only differences is that I normally do a live webinar with a live launch. And I do think that
Hmm.
that is one of the biggest differences because I often get the majority of the sales for a live launch during the live webinar. And so I would say that that probably is actually the biggest difference between the two, and the thing that makes the difference between the conversion rates.
Could you do a pitch to the audience right now about why they should consider webinars? Because I struggle sometimes to get people to want to do this. And I'm like, you guys are YouTubers. You're great on camera. You're great
Mhm.
at creating video.
Mhm.
But people don't want to do webinars very often. And I
Yeah.
love them. I think they're absolutely fantastic. They're one of the best performing marketing channels, but people
Yes.
rarely want to do it. So how have you got it set up so that it works well for you? Have you always found it easy? Was there stuff you found difficult that's kind of helps you to get to this point where you're running them really well?
Mhm, mhm. Well, I gotta say, I say the same things to my audience that you were just saying. And in some of my programs, I basically require the students to do webinars because I want them to get good results, and they are the most effective sales mechanism in my experience. Not just in my opinion, but in my experience, they are by far the most effective sales mechanism. I would say like lowest tier sales mechanism is going to be generally social media. You try to
Hmm.
run your launch on Instagram and it's going to be maybe not crickets, but not a lot of sales for sure.
Mm.
You can step that up to email marketing. And now it's consistent at least. And now we consistently get, about a 1% conversion rate. Like it's pretty solid, but it's low. And then you can step it up from there. And I would say like my next tier after that would probably be just like multi-channel. So like you're doing it on social media and email, that sort of thing, especially if you have a video component. So if you are doing YouTube and you actually make some videos where you're able to talk in length, not like extreme length, but like you have a little bit more time and space to be talking about your method, about your program, those sorts of things. Not that they're sales videos. I'm talking about educational videos here. And then my next tier, which is like huge step up, is webinars. I very consistently get minimum 5% conversion rate on webinars, and it's normally 10% or higher. If it's under 10%, we're like, that webinar was kind of a flop. What happened? Right? 10% is my standard for webinars, which is, obviously head and shoulders above the 1% that we see for email. So I would say to anybody, if right now your course is selling great via email or on social media, then don't do webinars. You don't need them. But if you are struggling to make sales, or if you would like to see a lot more sales come in, definitely do webinars. You can do an evergreen webinar. And by the way, nobody's pretending their evergreen webinars are live anymore. Don't do that. Okay. But you can make a webinar style video and you can put it on a page on your website and you can use it as an opt-in offer. Everybody uses, maybe not everybody, almost everybody uses opt-in offers to grow their email list. What's the purpose of all that, right? We're trying to get people on our email list so ultimately they buy our product. The opt-in offer that converts better than anything else is a webinar. You're going to get a high conversion rate of people signing up for the webinar. And with any other opt-in offer, the person will sign up, then they'll get on your list, and then 1% of them will end up buying your product, if that. Use a webinar. You will have 5% of people. Just like that one change if you do nothing else. And then, of course, the highest tier in terms of conversion mechanisms would be, the one-to-one sales call, which makes sense sometimes, if you have a high-ticket product. But if you're selling an online course for a few $100s, it probably doesn't make sense. And so your sweet spot really will be a webinar, live or recorded.
Yeah, and I think webinars also are really good when you're selling something that's a little bit more expensive. Like if you're selling something for $100, $150, you can do that fine with email. It's like, the downside to webinars is you've got like a drop off in terms of conversion percentages, right? Because you've got to get people, first of all, to open the email, then to click through to the landing page, and to register for the webinar, and then to turn up to the webinar, and then to stay to the end of the webinar, and then to buy, right? So you've got all those potential drop off points. But if you're selling something for like, I don't know, it depends if it's B2C or B2C, but let's say $600 or $1,000. Like, it's going to be hard to do that by email in most niches. You know?
Okay. I think that's a really important point. I was just talking about like what in general converts the best, but different price points of products. In my opinion, under about $200, you're better off actually not using a webinar generally, because you can make enough sales just like running ads to a sales page, really, or to your shop or via email. All those very direct ways of promoting your product can work really well. Certainly under $100, I would not use a webinar because, like you're saying, there's all these conversion drop-off points. Every time you add another one of these points where the person has to convert from your email to your webinar registration page, or your webinar registration page to actually showing up for the webinar, or the webinar to buying. Every time you add one of those, it tends to cut your sales in half at least. So you want to use the minimum number of conversion points that you possibly can to sell your product. And with a product that is under $100 to $200, you can get away with a lot fewer conversion points. You can send people straight from social media to your sales page, or anywhere to your sales page, and actually make the maximum number of sales possible, I would say. We also, I don't think, generally want to use webinars for very high ticket products. Generally, I say over about $2,000. Now, there's like a little bit of a gray area there, I think, where you could use it for a higher ticket product than that, but you definitely would need a learn more, like book a call, book a discovery call sort of call to action, not a buy now call to action. I find that the buy now on the webinar call to action works the best in that $200 to $2,000 price point. Yeah. And above that, you're either saying book a call, or else you're not doing the webinar at all and you're just asking people to book a call initially, doing the one-to-one sales.
Yes, like sell by chat and that kind of thing starts to work when you got the higher ticket stuff or sales calls, like you're saying. But if you've got something in that sweet spot that Gillian is talking about here, consider doing a webinar. Consider
Please
trying
do a
that out because they work so well. Okay, now we've only got a few minutes left. I just
Yes.
wanted to ask you about, do you ever run tripwire funnels?
Oh, okay. Yes and no. I have tried many of them in my day, and I've had very mixed results with them. I think that they are excellent if you are running paid ads and you're trying to recoup ad spend. Excellent. I have generally not run my business that way. I've experimented with it, and I always come back to my long form content, my content marketing. That really is what works the best for me. It's what keeps my profit, margins up the highest they can be. It's what attracts the best, most engaged audience that really buys my products at the highest rates. It's just a win-win-win. So I don't generally do that. And then when I have tried using Tripwire products with my organic audience, what I found is that it overall has a negative impact on my revenue, because so many people buy those small products and then don't use them. Of course, not everybody, but a lot of people do. And then I think that creates a mental barrier for them to wanting to buy the more expensive product because they feel that they should use that cheap product before they, spend even more money. I also think that it can set up an expectation of your product being cheap, your products being cheap. And so I actually prefer kind of a reverse funnel strategy where we start out with the highest ticket products as at least the initial pitch, really to just set the tone and be like, okay, here's the standard, here's what you can expect. And so then when they do see one of my less expensive products, it feels more like, a great deal and something that they want to take advantage of. So I lead with that highest ticket product. It's not necessarily that people are buying it then, but it is at least like planting a seed in their mind and price anchoring. Then we can transition to maybe a lower ticket product. And then when they see the quality there, then that is when they often end up upgrading, or having an upsell happen where they invest in the highest ticket product.
Nice. Okay, so you think of the initial point as being like offer the high ticket product in order to anchor that, make them think this is the kind of price stuff is. When they then see something for $200 or something, they're like, oh, what an amazingly cheap deal. They get in and then they complete that. And ideally, if it's a cohort, they're more likely to finish it. And then because they succeeded, they're more likely to upsell to the next level.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so I get them interested in that first product, that first expensive product, and it makes them interested in working with me because they see it as this high value thing. And, maybe they've been following me for a while as well. So now there's like multiple reasons why working with Gillian feels like this sought after thing. And so then when they get the opportunity to maybe work with me for $200, $400, $500, then it's like, oh, and now this is doable, because initially, they wanted to invest in the $4,000 program, but, they had various reservations. They weren't quite sure if it would work for them and if it would be a good investment, if they would get that ROI. Now, here's the opportunity to test the waters.
That's fascinating. Okay. Well, Gillian, thank you so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate your time. If people want to go check out your site or your YouTube channel, where should they go?
Yeah, you can look me up, just my name, Gillian Perkins, anywhere you want. I would recommend, either going to GillianPerkins.com or looking me up on YouTube just by typing in my name. You'll find a huge collection of YouTube videos. I've been making videos about online business since 2017. So I think 9 years now. So there are 9 years worth of videos that you can learn from if you want to learn more about these strategies for selling digital products online and making a living with your online business.
Awesome. Gillian, thanks so much. And as always, thank you for listening. We will see you next time.